Hello and welcome today. Just to let you know, we've got a couple of links that I put out there in the chat window, and you'll hear these links throughout the presentation. But this presentation will be more of a live demo than a PowerPoint presentation. So you'll see there in the chat window I put the gsa.gov/eRETA website in the chat window, and as well as the Client Enrichment Series website, gsa.gov/CES. And for those that can hear me, just want to make sure that you have your volume turned up. Steve, are you there? Just want to make sure for a sound check.
Yes, I'm here, James.
Okay, thanks, Steve. So like I said, welcome. Good day, everyone. My name is James Fotopoulos, and I'm a Regional Account Manager in the Portfolio Division out of Kansas City in Region 6. Welcome to a special session of GSA's Client Enrichment Series using RWA digital signatures with our presenter, Steve Sacco. Steve is a National Program Manager for the Reimbursable Services Division that is part of GSA's Public Building Service Office of Division and Construction in Washington, D.C. Steve oversees the Data Management Process Improvement Team, which manages RETA and eRETA, two of PBS's nationwide IT applications. Additionally, the team provides data and matrix to senior management about the health and trending of the Reimbursable Services Program. The Reimbursable Services Program as a whole accepts over 15,000 new RWAs annually from 330 unique customer agency bureaus located in all 50 states and 7 U.S. territories. PBS delivers nearly $2 billion in RWA projects and services annually. Steve and his team are consistently identifying process improvements and implementing technological solutions to streamline the RWA lifecycle. Prior to working with the RWA Services Division, Steve spent 7 years with GSA's Chief Financial Officer as a Senior Financial Analyst and a Financial Management Intern. Prior to coming to GSA in 2002, Steve was a local TV meteorologist on stations in central Pennsylvania and upstate New York. Steve earned a bachelor's in meteorology and a bachelor's in economics from the Pennsylvania State University and later a master's in business administration from the University of Maryland. Steve is also a graduate of GSA's Advanced Leadership and Development Program and a recent graduate from the Excellence in Government Fellows Program sponsored by the Partnership for Public Service. Before I turn the presentation over to Steve, I'd like to share a few housekeeping instructions. We have automatically muted your audio to help us control the sound quality of the presentation. If you have a question during the presentation, please use the chat pane. You can find it on the right side of your screen. Type your question or comment in the box, and your fellow attendees and our team of subject matter experts will see your question. We hope to encourage an interactive dialogue using this feature. We will try to address all questions during the session today. Any questions that we are unable to get to today will be noted, and all questions will be answered and posted on our Client Enrichment Series website, like I said, gsa.gov/CES. If you prefer to suppress the chat feature, you can click on the four-headed arrow at the upper right-hand corner of your presentation share screen to maximize your screen view, and this will be very helpful when we go to our live demo. So if the demo seems kind of small, just click on that four-headed arrow, and that should help you out. Should you have a question or comment, you can toggle right back to the chat pod by hovering over the upper right-hand corner of your screen and selecting the four-headed arrow again. Then the chat will reappear. Today's presentation will be a live demo of our eRETA tool. Like I said, there is no formal presentation slide deck. Customers participating via telephone only today may generally follow along with the screenshots found in the user guide links available on our eRETA website, and that's at gsa.gov/eRETA. We encourage everyone on the line today to refer back to these helpful user guides since they mirror what we will be demonstrating today. Thank you, and now let's begin with our presentation. Take it away, Steve.
Thank you, James, and welcome everybody to our session on digital signatures today. As James mentioned, we will have, or today's session will be largely a live demonstration. I will jump into our RETA and eRETA test environment to show you how this might work on a day-to-day basis, what you would see when you log into our eRETA application, and then how Digital signatures, easy for me to say, might look for those of you or those in your offices who would normally sign RWAs on behalf of your region. So I'm going to show you all that today. I do have a few slides to kind of introduce everything, but after these few slides I will then jump into our live, or our, I should say our testing environment to show some of those features. So first and foremost, let's back up just a little bit and give you the background on what has happened here in the last 4 weeks or almost a full month at this point in time. So back on May 5th of this year, we, GSA, introduced several new electronic features for our RWA program to allow the workflow to be more transparent, make it a little bit more interactive, and obviously more efficient between you all as our customer agencies and us as GSA. Overall, while we're just focused today on the integrated digital signature solution, all of the new features that we did roll out back in early May include the following 3 features. Data entry capabilities that allow our customer agency to identify and submit new project or service needs, something we're calling RWA work requests to GSA online through the eRETA application. And eRETA, if we haven't defined it yet, stands for External RWA Entry and Tracking Application. In addition to the ability to submit those work requests, customers then have the opportunity to not only submit those work requests, but then to also do full-on data entry capabilities to submit their RWAs to us. So instead of filling out page 1 of the RWA 2957 form in PDF format or by hand or however you might be filling it out in the past, you can now replace that process by entering all that same information directly into our eRETA application, which then flows downstream to our billing system, and therefore all of your billing statements and such will have that same data on there. So if you missed our demonstration yesterday, we had a demonstration on eRETA and doing direct data entry and work requests yesterday, May 31st. We had another one several weeks earlier in May. Those were our only 2, so if you missed both of those, don't worry. We have 2 options for you still. One is we recorded those sessions, so there's a video recording of them similar to what you're witnessing today, but that one will now be a recording as opposed to a live demonstration. But those links to those live recordings of those demonstrations will be available both at the Client Enrichment Series website, which is www.gsa.gov/CES, and we will also make those available on our eRETA website, which I'm about to show you as well. But that website is www.gsa.gov/eRETA. So you'll be able to find the same video linked to either one of those websites in the very near future. And lastly, the new electronic feature that we rolled out in early May was the integrated digital signature solution. And that's what we're going to demonstrate here today for the next 55 minutes or so. So these first 2 features, the direct data entry capabilities, whether it be a work request or a brand new RWA, those require the user to have an eRETA user ID and password, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here on the next slide. The third feature, digital signatures, in order to sign RWAs on behalf of your agency, that signer, whoever he or she may be, does not need eRETA access. They merely need an email address for us to send a digital signature request to them. So if your only role in the RWA process as the customer agency is just to sign the RWAs, then you would not need eRETA access. You certainly can get eRETA access if you want to look at your RWAs and pull down information and whatnot that eRETA offers, but you would not need it in order to apply your digital signature. So all of these 3 features are optional, but we highly encourage them. We spent a lot of time and effort in several of our customer agencies, who are some even on the call today, served as live beta testers and change agents, really, SMEs, to help us kind of flush out how these functions should work. So a lot of this stuff isn't just saying, hey, I think the customers might want it this way, so we'll build it that way. It wasn't GSA working in a vacuum to build these new features. We had input from several customers, from several different customer agencies, meeting with us regularly, beta testing this stuff out. So that's how we got to the endpoint we are today. So while they're optional, at least right now, we highly encourage you to use them because we think they'll make your life a little bit easier as you process RWAs with GSA. So I mentioned this website earlier. I'm going to mention about 632 more times in today's presentation. But aside from today's live training demonstration, we have a whole host of resources on our website, which is, again, www.gsa.gov/ERETA, E-R-E-T-A. And on this site, we have instructions on how to gain access to ERETA. Kind of important if you want to start submitting work requests or entering your RWAs directly online. But again, you don't require that access if you're only doing the digital signatures. But on that website are those instructions. Our three-step application process is outlined on our website. Additionally, on that website are user guides for both digital signatures and also on entering RW work requests and RWAs themselves into ERETA. On top of those user guides, which are relatively brand new, we also have additional user guides on there just for basic ERETA use. ERETA has been around since 2011, so it's not brand new. What is brand new is the data entry capabilities. It was merely a read-only application to customers from 2011 up until this May of 2017. But there are user guides out there on that website as well for just basic navigation and using the queries in ERETA to pull reports and whatnot. So if you're super novice and want to at least start with the basics, those user guides are out there as well. Also on the website will be video training demonstrations, as I mentioned a little while ago, a video recording of digital signatures like today's demonstration, and a video recording of how to enter RWAs and RW work requests into ERETA. Those live training demonstration videos will also be posted on our ERETA website very shortly as well. Lastly, well, I guess this link or this bullet doesn't apply anymore. Links to register for one of our other live training sessions are no longer there because today is the last one of the 4 that we offered through the month of May, although today is June 1st. So there are no more live training demonstrations right now to register for. However, we may consider adding more demonstrations in the near future if there is enough demand for it. So once again, that website, www.gsa.gov/ERETA. So let's talk a little bit about digital signatures before we jump into the live training environment here to show you what it all looks like. So digital signatures, as I mentioned, the other features too, are always, or at least at the moment, are optional for our customer agencies. So you don't have to sign them digitally if you choose not to. You can continue to sign the PDF form in block 18A where you would normally sign the RWA and send it to GSA by means you might normally send it to GSA. Alternatively, all of GSA signatures, though, we sign on block 28A, are now required to be digitally signed. So if you opt not to use our digital signature solution for the time being, the RWA, the fully accepted RWA is going to be split with one manual signature on page 1 and then one digital signature applied on page 2. In the future, if you do opt in to use digital signatures, then obviously both signatures, the customers and GSAs, will both be digitally applied and both be on the same PDF file. So for part of this transition period, you might have different methods between how you sign the RWA and how GSA signs the RWA. Again, can't stress this one enough, RETA and ERETA access is not needed to use or digitally sign RWAs. In fact, you don't need any software or any special user ID or password. Whoever signs the RWAs simply needs an email address, and once GSA routes an RWA for signature, which will be the last thing we get now before RWA acceptance, they get the email, follow the instructions, which I'll show you here in just a little bit, and apply their signature from their computer, their smartphone, their tablet, wherever they might be. Digital signatures can be applied pretty much anywhere that you have internet access and can gain access to your government email account. So, some other things first before I mention, or before we move into the demonstration here. So there's really a mix and match here. We have those two main features, digital signatures being one, direct data entry being feature number 2, but both can be used together. Some agencies might choose to use one and then the other one later. Some agencies might choose to use neither one of them, but there is no right or wrong combination. We've made the system and our process flexible for the time being to allow you to gradually transition to one or both of these features as you see fit. So for example, you as a customer agency could enter your RWAs directly into ERETA, which were the sessions we provided on May 18th and May 31st, and then enter the email address of the agency fund certifying official who will apply their digital signature. Or, alternatively, you could fill out the RWA 2957 form, so the PDF format, as you have done for years and years and years now. But instead of signing the RWA PDF form, you could, in Block 18A or Block 18C, write in, we request to sign digitally. So when you give GSA the PDF form but haven't signed it, instead you wrote this text in there, that'll be the aha moment to the GSA region accepting your RWA to know, okay, the customer has opted to digitally sign this RWA, so we will route this RWA for them, or to gather their digital signature when we are just before we are ready to accept the RWA. So this will all become a little more clear when I get into the demonstration, so I promise you that. So I'm going to exit the PowerPoint presentation right now and enter the live training or enter the live test environment to show you what a sample digital signature request might look like. If you are only joining us by phone, meaning you're not able to see my screen right now, we again request or suggest, I guess suggest is a better word, that you go to our website one more time, www.gsa.gov/eRETA. And if you scroll down maybe just a little bit of the way, you'll see a document titled User Guide, Requesting and Applying Digital Signatures. And you can follow along with that document, which I will closely follow with the live demonstration. It won't follow verbatim, but I'll closely follow that, so that should give you a sense of where we are. Worst case, if you don't remember everything from today's live demonstration, that's a great resource to go back and download and save that user guide to walk you through the first few digital signature requests you might do. After that, it'll be super easy, like riding a bicycle, and you'll be able to move forward by applying digital signatures rather seamlessly thereafter. Okay, let me, hold on here, get our test environment over here. Make sure I get the wrong tab, right tab I mean. Okay, so right now, let me get you back to the front of everything here. On my screen, oops, I was logged out, so perfect. Now I can definitely start over from scratch. So right now I'm logging in as if I was a customer agency user into eRETA. Now again, I said you did not need eRETA access to use digital signatures, and that's still true, but I'm kind of showing you some of the work, pre-work, so to speak, of what might happen before the RWA gets routed for digital signature. So right now I've logged into eRETA as if I was a Social Security Administration eRETA user, an SSA eRETA user. So let me pull up an RWA that's primed for digital signature. Okay. So in this scenario, it actually could mimic two scenarios. So the customer agency has access to half of these data entry tabs, as you can see on the left-hand pane. So these first four tabs are all customer-related information, equivalent to page 1 of the RWA 2957 form. These final three tabs, which are disabled and grayed out, are GSA-only information. So this is those tabs would be equivalent to page 2 of the RWA 2957 form. So at the end of the day, as a customer and as SSA, in this particular example, I would only have access to these first four tabs, aka page 1. These final three tabs I do not have access to, although I can view them in read-only status later on. So one of two things might have happened here, as you can see, as I'll click on each one of these tabs, and you can see the data is populated in the appropriate blocks. Then this data would have gotten into RETA/eRETA in one of two ways. SSA, as the customer, as an eRETA user, has come in here and proactively entered all of their data directly into eRETA, as opposed to filling out the RWA 2957 form. Scenario 2 is the customer agency still filled out the PDF version of the 2957 form and sent it to the GSA region managing that project or service, and GSA went in and entered all their information. So prior to May of 2017 anyway, that was the only scenario, right? You would hand GSA the 2957 form, and we would enter all the information into RETA on your behalf. Now you have control, if you so choose to enter it yourself. But if you don't, we will still obviously enter your information into these appropriate tabs. So that would have been, one of those two ways would have been how all the information was input into the application in the first place. So now I'm on the customer approval tab, and again, you as the customer, if you have eRETA access, would be able to navigate to this tab on any RWA. Similarly, GSA would also have access to this tab before doing all of the data entry still on your behalf. So on the customer approval tab, a few things to point out. So first and foremost, if you have questions or this is the first time you've been doing or will do digital signatures, we have this little help menu here that's collapsed temporarily, but you can expand it, and it has some more detail about how to use digital signatures or electronic signatures. We will use those terms interchangeably. And if you choose not to use digital signatures, how to use the pen and ink version, how you could sign the RWA, upload it into the application so we have a copy of it, and how that works. And then lastly, there's also a little section on amendments and when we do and do not require a new signature to be captured. So at the top here of this tab, you can see we have two options. We have the electronic signature request, which would then route this RWA or tell GSA when we're ready to accept the RWA that the customer has chosen to apply their signature digitally. Option two is the manual signature, in which case the customer has already provided GSA the 2957 form with the signature and the date they signed it already on the form. In that case, we know that we can input that information as we have it on the form. Alternatively, if you, as in this case, if you were SSA and you came into eRETA here and you filled out all this information, or you saw that GSA filled it all out on your behalf, you would also have the same options. You could do the manual signature option, which in this case, you would just click this Print Form 2957 button, which generates the 2957 form with all of the data on those other few tabs already pre-populated in the appropriate blocks. I'll show you what that looks like when this loads. And there you go. So you can see all the data is populated in the appropriate block of the form. You could then print this 2957 form out, take it to your supervisor or yourself, depending on who's signing the RWA. Sign the RWA in the appropriate block, 18A and 18B. This is an old one, so this is already pre-populated from a past submission. So, but that's what you can do. You print this out, have your boss or you sign, whoever signed the RWA, they would sign it, and then they would come back here into eRETA if they wanted to, and upload the RWA here. You click on the Upload New button, and the upload process is similar to attaching a document to an email. It's the same exact process. So if you chose the manual signature route, this is how it would work. And let me actually start all the way. Let's back all the way to the top. So if you chose the manual signature route, the customer has two options. Option one is you send us the RWA PDF format, signed as you always have, as you've been doing for years and years and years. So essentially there's no change. You could just even forget we're even having a digital signature demonstration today. Option one is you would sign the RWA as you always have and hand it over or send it in or email it into the GSA region as you always have. No changes, same process. Option two with the manual signature is you did come into eRETA, you did enter this information, you have printed out this RWA from RETA, had whoever signed the RWA sign it, and then you'd come back in here and upload the RWA, the signed RWA, into RETA so we'd have a copy of the signed version. And then you'd click the Send to GSA button and send everything to GSA to say, hey, I'm turning it over to you. Now we just need you to fill out page 2 and then submit this RWA, at which time we would then send out the acceptance letter once all of that stuff happened. So if you chose manual signatures, that would be your two options. Same way as you always have, or you come into eRETA and upload the manually signed document. Digital signatures, you also have two paths to take there. The first path, as I mentioned at the very beginning, is that you could still fill out the RWA 2957 form manually, but in block 18A or 18C, where the fund certifying official, the customer fund certifying official, would normally sign the RWA, they would instead write request to digitally sign RWA. And once they hand that over to GSA or email that to GSA or however they got it to GSA, we would say, oh, okay. So they filled out the form manually, but they do want to use the digital signature route. So that's how we would acknowledge that, and that's how we put this into the system, at which time we would shortly thereafter route this RWA for digital signature, in this case, to this email address. Or let's pick someone's name just for the sake of using a name. So in this case, we would route the RWA to David Harris to sign the RWA. Option 2 for the electronic signature request is that instead of handing GSA a PDF version of the RWA form, you did proactively come into eReader, you filled out all 3 or 4 of these tabs here, and not only did you do the direct data entry, but you're also going to do the digital signatures as well. You click this electronic signature request button here. You tell us who we need to route this to, so David Harris in this case, or any one of these other names. And if none of the names pre-populated in the pull-down menu match who should sign the RWA, you would merely click the Add New option, in which case you could then click the magnifying glass here and type in the information about who that new person is, who should be signing this particular RWA. And once you've entered someone's email address and their other corresponding information once, his or her name and email will then show up in future pull-down menus. If there's someone new that's never signed an RWA, you only have to enter his or her name into the system once, and thereafter it'll pre-populate in the pull-down menu. So for purposes of this demo, I'm going to say that the customer agency actually signed this RWA manually, just because I don't want to accidentally send an email to someone in Social Security making them think they actually have to sign this RWA, since this is a dummy RWA that we're just using in our test environment. So let's just assume that for sake of argument that SSA in this case handed GSA the RWA with a signature already applied, traditional pen and ink signature, so we don't need to capture their digital signature too because we already have their name. Okay, so let's do this. Make sure everything's good. Send it to GSA now. And now I'm going to log in as a GSA user to show you how this works. So and this is just a confirmation that you might see if you were in eReader yourself of what happens next, depending if you use the manual signature or if you use the digital signature. So now let me route this for signature to kind of show you the real meat of the demonstration. So let me log out of here, log back in as a GSA user this time. So what I wanted to mention while I'm doing this here is that the current process, or I guess the pre-May 5th process, was that customer agencies would send us or fill out page 1 of the 2957 form. They'd sign that form and then hand it to GSA. So we'd have everything from the customer at that point in time. Once given to GSA, GSA would finish out filling out page 2 of the RWA. One of our GSA data entry users would come into RETA and enter both pages 1 and page 2 into all these tabs that you saw a little while ago. We would then get our signature from our PBS approving official. He or she would sign it, and once we got that signature for him or her, we'd submit our RWA to our financial management database in GSA, which we call Pegasus. And at that point in time, we've had a fully accepted RWA, and GSA would turn around and send out the acceptance letter to the customer agency to let them know. So that's the pre-May 5th process, pre-digital signature process. The post-digital signature process, if you opt in for digital signatures, whether you're coming into eReader and asking for it yourself, or you're just writing that information down in block 18A or 18C to say, hey, we filled out the form on PDF, but we are opting to digitally sign it, so we're going to do at least that little piece of it electronically. What happens in that scenario when digital signatures are captured is that we fill out all of the information, both pages 1 and pages 2 first, and then the last 2 things that we capture now would be the customer's digital signature and then GSA's digital signature. So the future workflow, or the new workflow with digital signatures, is that the signatures are the final two pieces of the puzzle, whereas before the customer signature came somewhere in the middle of the process. So that is the one kind of noticeable change with where we capture the customer signature in the process. We're capturing it at the end, just a few moments before acceptance, as opposed to capturing it somewhere in the middle of that process, which could be a couple hours, a couple days, a couple weeks, depending on how quickly the region turned around and accepted the RWA. So in this case, I've logged in as the GSA person. I'm going to route this RWA. And you see in this case, I don't have an option to manually sign the RWA. That's because internally in GSA, we said all RWAs from this point forward, so from May 5th forward, have to be digitally signed. In this case, though, even though I would not normally sign RWAs on behalf of Region 4, I'm going to add my name here just so I can get the email so you can see what it looks like. So now I'm going to request signatures, and only GSA can request the signatures digitally because we have to wait till all the information is entered in here, pages 1 and page 2, as I mentioned, and since customers can't enter our page 2 stuff, the only option is that once GSA finishes page 2 stuff, then we can route the RWA for signature. So the GSA user would hit request signatures. They get a little confirmation message first before it went out, which should pop up here shortly. And this is the message that someone in GSA would see, that this is about to be routed for a digital signature. It's confirming who this is going to be routed to. Now in this case, we said that we'd want the customer, we indicated that the customer signed it manually, and I only did that in this demo because I didn't want to accidentally send an email out to somebody in Social Security to make them think they actually had an RWA to sign, since this is not a real RWA in our training environment. So we just assumed that in this scenario, the customer manually signed it, and that's therefore telling the RETA and eRETA applications to not route it to anybody on the customer side because we already have their signature manually somewhere. We've uploaded it. And in this case, we're only routing it to the GSA approving official, which in this particular demo would be me. Now, even what I'm about to show you next will be the email that, oh boy, that's not good in our test environment. Always something to throw a monkey, a wrench in the cogs. So let me go to my backup mode here. So I'm going to show you what the email might look like, and then I will take a pause because I see there's a lot of questions being asked, so I want to make sure I'm addressing them. I know my colleagues Ashley and Jeff are feverishly typing away to give you answers to your questions, but if there are some I can elaborate on, I will do that. So let me find a digital signature email request here first. Okay.
And Steve, as you're doing that, I just want to let you know we don't have any questions that need your attention. It looks like our team of folks here are taking them as they come in. So.
Perfect. So it turns out our friends on the digital signature team turned off their environment. That's why we got this little error message to say that it's temporarily unavailable, even though they promised me it would be available. So I'll have to talk to somebody after this call. If it were live, and it won't go down, it won't be offline in the real world, this is what the email might look like that came to me to say, hey, the subject line is going to look something like this. It's going to start out with RWA. Now, in this case, pretend this is you or whoever signed the RWAs on your behalf or on behalf of your agency. They would get this email. It would look exactly the same. So the subject line would start out with RWA, give you the RWA number, and then give you the city and state where the RWA work is to be done, along with a sequential number. And then it'll tell you, hey, this e-sign package was sent to you by, in this case, Carolyn. Carolyn was the one who sent this to me, and Carolyn is the GSA data entry user for that region. And so the email would look almost identical to this. It would just, I know it might be a little hard to see. Let me try to make it a little bit bigger here. So it's bigger on your end too. So it has some basic information, so the individual who might sign the RWA for your agency would see the same thing. Here's the two actions you need to do to sign this RWA, and below it here is kind of a high-level summary of the RWA itself, so you can review it before you even jump into the RWA. My action here would be to click on this blue or green or teal colored button to then apply my signature. That'll launch eSign Live, so you're technically not using RETA or eRETA to sign your RWAs. You're using eSign Live. And that one's right. Let me find a sample one. I'm sorry, guys. This was not how I hoped the demonstration would go. I was not expecting our eSign Live environment to be out of service, at least the test environment. The live environment's running well. Find another one that might still be working here. Here. So this is what a signer would normally see then if the package was live, the signature package was live. And believe me, I know you probably don't believe me, but you should believe me that this is the little quirks I had here was just because our test environment for eSign Live was offline apparently, unbeknownst to me. And then the other package, which was a live one that I've already signed in real life, is closed now, so I can't sign it again. So that's why I got this error message. So I found a different one that was in our test environment from a past demo to give you a sense of what it looks like. So the basics of it all are this. GSA routes the RWA for signature. Whoever you indicated would sign the RWA on behalf of your agency would immediately get an email, a few seconds later after we click that button. They would click on that blue or teal button in the email, and the first screen they would get would be this eSign disclosures and consent form. It's just a basic consent form saying, hey, FYI, if you sign this RWA or sign this document that follows, you're going to get, we're going to be capturing information about you and the IP address you're at and all that stuff to say, so we can identify who signed it and where they signed it, when they signed it, and all that stuff. So you're just agreeing to that. You would have an agree button or accept button down here. I've already accepted this one in the past, that's why it's gone now. Once you accept it, you'll be routed to a copy of the RWA 2957 form with all the data pre-populated. So while the email itself had some high-level summary information, if you remember it had, I can go back to it, it just said, this RWA is about this, that, and the other thing. The RWA itself, the full RWA, the full 2957 is here in eSign Live. So the signing authority, the certifying official would get to review all this RWA information if they wanted to. And then what would happen here, now this one again was already signed in a previous demonstration, but what you can see here in block 28A in this case, only GSA signed it digitally is what I would have here before I signed it would be a little yellow tab, and the same thing would happen up here. If you as the customer agency signed it, you would have a little yellow tab on block 18A to say here, apply your digital signature. And once you click the button to say I want to sign it, and you confirm the OK, eSign Live would capture your digital signature, and then their digital signature stamp would look something like this, with this like blue E in here, eSign by whatever your name was, and then the date that you applied your signature. Once you applied your signature, eSign Live would then immediately send an email to the GSA person to say, hey, it's your turn to sign it. So-and-so from SSA already did sign this RWA, it's your turn. We would follow the same steps. That person would get an email. They would click on that blue or teal button, which would launch this eSign Live application to apply their signature. And then once both signatures are captured by the customer and by GSA, the full package is sent back to our RETA application, and it's at that time or shortly thereafter, RETA sends an email back to the original RETA user to say, hey, I've captured, or eSign Live has captured all the signatures and sent it back to us. You can now go ahead and send the customer and the GSA project manager, and anyone else for that matter, the acceptance letter for this RWA. So that is the process. If I were to do this, let's just show you the user guide, because those that are following the user guide in my live demo actually had a better experience. for today's demonstration here. So the user guide on our gsa.gov/eRETA site is right here. And I'll just show you some of the screenshots in the user guide, which again are accessible to you all. Have some of the better pictures. So let me scroll down to what I was hoping to show you in the test environment. So here again is a copy of that email that any signer would get with that blue or teal or green button at the bottom. Once they clicked on that, they would get that the consent and agreement terms. And when they came to the 2957, this is what the screen would look like. So you'd have that little yellow sticky on the screen. You would merely click the yellow sticky. It would confirm you want to sign it, capture your signature, capture your IP address, capture the date and time and all that stuff, and send that information back to RETA. And once that happens, the complete RWA is not only would, well, first off, as I mentioned, we will send it back to you as with the acceptance letter. But if you do have eRETA access, a copy of that form, the signed form, will automatically be uploaded into the RETA documentation tool, which all of you have access to. So you'll always have a copy of that RWA accessible to you if you also have eRETA access. So unfortunately, I couldn't show you the final 10% of the process in the live environment, but hopefully you guys got a sense of how it works with the emails I showed you, and of course the user guide goes into more detail about how this process works. The main thing to take away here is that the only thing we need in order for you to apply your signature digitally to any new RWA or any amended RWA that requires new signatures is that we need your email address. And then once you do, or whoever the signer is, they get the email, they click that green or teal button, and then they're walked through the steps to apply their digital signature. Once they apply it on that little yellow sticky, the system captures everything, sends it back to RETA, and everything's uploaded, and we have your signature. There's no, like I said, there's no extra login, no password, no special software to install. The user or the individual who will sign the RWA literally just needs an active email address that they can receive these eSign Live emails from. So I'm going to pause there because I have covered a lot of the stuff I wanted to. I do have a few other small tidbits I just want to let you know about as it applies to digital signatures, but I will pause here for a question or two if there are any out there.
Hey, Steve, we've got a question here, and I think this kind of deals with if you have an agency that has a different workflow process than we have. So the question here is if a customer has their approving authority person sign off on the GSA, does it automatically go to GSA? So I'm assuming if they get that email, that teal box, they click on that and they sign it and it goes to GSA. Their process is whoever's signing off on the RWA will sign it, and then they route it internally to make sure the approval has been, or the funding approval has been assigned, an internal numbering, and then it's sent off to GSA. So they kind of route it a little bit differently. They get it signed, then they send it internally, and then it goes to GSA.
Right. Okay, good question. So I can answer, there's two answers for this. The first answer is how it works today, and then the second answer will be how it works, or we're looking to make it work in the future with some enhancements we're already working on behind it, well, not behind the scenes, but well, I guess behind the scenes. Some additional enhancements we're working on to add even more bells and whistles to the digital signature routing. So answer number one, current process is there's only one signature captured from the customer. So on the RWA 2957 form today, there is only one block, block 18A, that the customer signs. We don't have three signature blocks on the RWA form. We only have one signature block on the RWA form, and that's 18A. So there should only be one person actually signing the RWA, and that's the person's signature we're capturing, or should be capturing, when we're using the digital signature. So that's this fund certifying official block 18A on the 29th consent form. That's the only signature we captured. So in the case where somebody approves it in the agency, but then it goes to their headquarters for them to get funding approval, if that person in headquarters is the one that normally signs the RWA, then it should be his or her name in this block here as the fund certifying official email address. And what would happen then is that before you hand the GSA the RWA, if you're doing it offline, or before you hit that send the GSA button, which if you recall in the demo was down here, if you're entering stuff in eRETA, is that you would get all those, for lack of a better word, pre-approvals before you finally said, okay, we've gotten all those pre-approvals, and now the last thing we need is who's going to sign block 18A because we're ready to send this to him or her. So that's how it works today. Answer. You wouldn't route this for signature or even send it to GSA until you knew you had all those pre-approvals first. And then you could send it to GSA with the last person who signs block 18A as the final person to give his or her digital signature. So in the future, what we're looking to do with fiscal year 18, pending funding from our GSA IT Governance Board, which is always a fun thing to ask for money for, is that we're looking to expand the digital signature solution because we have the same process in GSA too as some of your agencies do, at least for our larger RWAs, where it's not just that one person who signs the RWA. So we have the same dilemma, right, on GSA side with today's solution is that we're only capturing one signature from GSA, the GSA approving official who would sign block 28A. There's only one GSA signature we capture on the RWA Form 2 today. So in essence, if there's multiple quote-unquote pre-approvals required in advance, we would get those first, and once we got those and everyone signed off on it, then and only then would we finally route this for signature for the last piece of the puzzle, the GSA approving official. In the future enhancement we're looking to do is that we will add optional routing for both the customer and for GSA. So for example, going back to this customer approval tab, right now we just have this one person, right, Deborah Love, as the person who would be the final fund certifying official. If your agency, though, wanted John Doe to give his approval first, and then Jane Doe to give her approval second, and then Deborah Love to sign it last, you could add John Doe and Jane Doe to the routing chain here. And they wouldn't sign the RWA per se, but they would be able to electronically give their approval, and we would capture all that information in the routing process. So that is what we're looking to do with in fiscal year 18, pending IT governance funding approval, but we will add additional layers of routing so you could accommodate that all electronically. Today, though, you have to do that stuff offline first and then get this final signature last electronically. Tomorrow, you can enter all the names into RETA or eRETA to route it electronically from the system. So hopefully that answers your question well enough. Any other questions at this time?
Steve, I think that's all we have.
Okay. So I see we have just about a little over 10 minutes to go. I'm not going to maximize all 10 minutes of those. I do want to just show you or share with you a few other things about digital signatures. So I'm back in the user guide. Again, you guys have access to download this user guide at any time. And the only thing I want to draw your attention to is what we have here on page 10 of the user guide. So this is, page 10 talks about when signatures are required on RWA amendments. So obviously we need signatures on new RWAs because we've never got signatures. On amendments, though, there are some amendments that are purely administrative. We don't need to get your signature again because the changes made to the RWA are not substantial enough to alter the terms of the agreement. But there are some changes that are pretty substantial that we will require a new signature. And this is what these bullets are here at the top of page 10. If any one of these fields are changed on an amendment, we will, as a system, will require us to get new signatures. Even if you're still signing manually as the customer, we will still need a new signature. So obviously, if the authorized amount changes up or down, we need a new signature because that changes the terms of the agreement. If you change the funding on it that you're funding the RWA with, whether that be the fund year, the fund type, or the fund expiration, if one of those changes, we will need new signatures. And then lastly, if you change the fund certifying official associated with the past submission. So if block 18A was John Doe, and now you send us a new amendment where block 18A is Jane Doe, well, we've never captured Jane Doe's signature on this RWA, so we need to capture it now. The system will require the signatures. Similarly with GSA, if we change the name of the person who signed the RWA from a past submission, RITA will require us to get new signatures because we've never captured a version of this RWA with that individual signature on it. So if any one of those changes, the systems will automatically require us to get new signatures. Again, you as the customer have the option to apply that signature manually if you want to, but GSA, no matter what, will have to apply that new signature electronically. So that is the one thing I did want to point out. Other than that, the user guide has some additional information on stuff you may or may not use, but we wanted to outline it there, so please take some time to read through. I did not cover every last thing that's in this user guide. There are a few things that are in here that I did not talk about, but make sure you use this user guide. And actually, this is another thing I want to talk about. If an RWA is routed for digital signature, and this screenshot here is now the user, the potential signer of the RWA receive that email. They open the signing, they open the RWA by clicking that green or blue or teal button, whatever color you want to call it. And they got to the RWA form with everything pre-populated. And then they realized, wait a minute, I shouldn't be signing this RWA, or this isn't even my agency, or whatever the case might be. They still have the option to click the opt-out button. There's an opt-out button in the eSign Live software that allows them to say, you know, I shouldn't be signing this, or I don't want to sign this, or maybe I don't feel comfortable signing this, in which case they will then be required to enter a justification of why they are opting out. Once they do, that justification will be sent back to the GSA RITA user who initiated the digital signature request, and then we can take action to either route it to a different signer or maybe capture or request the customer agency to sign it manually, whatever the case might be. But there is that option as the customer or GSA, whoever might be signing the RWA, to use this opt-out feature if they are not the appropriate one to be applying their digital signature to any given RWA. So that is everything I wanted to at least show you in this, what's turned out to be a quasi-live demonstration. Before we go to the last few slides and I turn it back over to James, is there any other lingering digital signature question I can answer that might not have been answered by my colleagues Jeff and Ashley yet?
I think a question that's come up a couple times is if the person that's signing off on the RWA, if they don't have access to eRITA, can they still sign off? And I think you went over that during the live demo. I remember there was an hourglass option there that you can click and add new and then add their email address. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I can show you that real quick again if that would be of help to people. Oh, I was out of our test environment for too long and now I log back in. No problem. I'll make this quick. Where did I go? Actually, I'll just show you what it looks like from the customer's perspective. All right. Pull up that same RWA we were working with. So let's take the example of we routed this RWA, or we me being, let's say I'm SSA again, that's who I am in this particular example. We entered, we entered Deborah to sign this RWA electronically. So we entered her name when we came to eRITA, or we wrote it on the RWA form when we sent it to GSA. Once GSA routed this RWA for digital signature, Deborah got the first email to sign digitally. And she said, wait a minute, I shouldn't be signing this, or I'm not going to sign it. She opts out. So now I get an email back, or GSA gets an email back to say, Deborah opted out for this reason or the other reason. I might not know as a GSA person and say, well, okay, well, who should sign this if it's not Deborah, in case Deborah didn't indicate who that person should be instead of her. I might reach out to the SSA point of contact, and he or she tells me, you know what, the real person is this, or better yet, the SSA person says, you know what, I got it. I'm going to go into eRETA and I'll update who should sign this RWA for us instead of Deborah. So they come in here and they say, you know, it's going to be John Doe at SSA.gov that's going to sign that RWA. And then they come to the pull down here to change it to John Doe, and they say, wait a minute, John Doe is not here. So what they would do is they click Add New, and then click the little magnifying glass icon. And now they would add John Doe's email address along with all the other information here, which in this case, we've added a John Doe before in our test environment. So all of his information populates into the appropriate blocks. If John Doe had never been used in RETA ever, period, all these required fields would just show up blank, and I'd have to enter all the information for John Doe. So once I did that, the screen now refreshes with John Doe, and now when I send this back to GSA, and then GSA reroutes it for digital signature, the signature request will go to John Doe at SSA.gov instead. So hopefully that helps clear that up a little bit. Let me jump back into our slideshow and wrap this thing up here. So I know you have questions. I see you guys have all been asking a lot of questions, which is great, and I'm very happy to have my colleagues Ashley and Jeff out there answering your questions feverishly. We will also be downloading all these questions, as I'm sure James will close it out with, but we will be downloading your questions into a simple document and answering them. Even though Ashley and Jeff had answered most of them, we will review them and maybe add some additional context or additional comments for some of those questions, and then once done, we will distribute them back out to all of you as well as post them online so you can take a look at your convenience. In the meantime, if you have other questions you weren't about to ask or don't know you even had a question about it until you really get into the weeds with eRETA or digital signatures, we have the following resources for you. First and foremost, that website I mentioned 642 times before this today is www.gsa.gov/eRETA. If you have more general RWA questions, not so much about the system or not so much about digital signatures, we also have our RWA website, which is very simple to remember at www.gsa.gov/RWA. And if you want to ask a more pointed question, we have some email boxes for you. Specific eRETA system questions can be sent to us at ereta@gsa.gov. More general RWA questions, so not system related, can be sent to ask.rwa@gsa.gov. And then lastly, if you have a very specific question, maybe about a specific project or a specific service, I'd recommend you bypass these more general mailboxes because we're just going to have to forward it to someone that knows the specific answer about a specific project. We would either contact or recommend you contact the GSA project manager, which you can find his or her email address on each RWA in eRETA, or you could start with the regional RWA manager, which is on the following tab here. And you don't have to memorize this map. The map is also available at that gsa.gov/RWA website as well. So don't feverishly think you have to take a screenshot of this. It's always available on that gsa.gov/RWA website. So that said, I'm going to stop talking and turn it back over to James to close us out.
Thanks, Steve. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your time today, as well as your team of RWA experts. They've been great as far as answering the questions on the fly in the chat window, and then some of the questions that you answered on your own. That was great. So thanks for doing that. Also want to thank all of you, our clients, who were able to join us today. The goal of the Client Enrichment Series is to engage our audience in workplace topics that can contribute to your mission and success and to your effective management of your real estate and workplace programs, and the RWA training is an example of that. If you would like to share additional feedback with us, you will have an opportunity to do so via a link in the email that you receive with your certificate of attendance today. Without you, there wouldn't be the Client Enrichment Series or eRETA. And with that, I will give you, I was going to say 1 minute of your time today, but it is straight up 2 o'clock. So thank you and have a great rest